Welcome back to my life. I am so excited about today's video because we are trying to make a sweater, and this is not any sweater. This is the Colossal Sweater by Macaulay, I think. If you are a girl on Instagram, you probably have already seen this sweater before, but it is the cutest thing I have ever seen. Definitely something that I want in my closet, but it's a little bit pricey, and it looks like it would be a really cool thing to make. I actually saw this sweater way back in July. I saved it on my Instagram so I could look back at it, and I keep on seeing influencers wear this. I don't know why, I have not done it yet. But last week my girl Mira, aka Danny Bambi, put out an amazing tutorial on this, and low-key she gave me the final motivation I needed to actually sit down and do this. If you guys haven't seen her video, please go check out her channel. Today I'm going to try my hand at making this sweater as well. I definitely don't think it's going to turn out as well as Mira's, but it doesn't hurt to try. So I went to Michael's, and thankfully they were still having that yarn sale for like buy one get half off for yarn. The color selection was so limiting. I don't know who's buying yarn at this time, probably for like quarantine projects or to make this chunky knit sweater, but this is what I could find. I spent so long deciding between like the 10 colors that they had. I thought I did need chunky needles, so my mom actually got that for me way back in September, which I feel bad now because I'm not going to use that, but apparently you can do this with your hands. And I'm just gonna try it with my hands because that's easier than trying to like learn how to use the needles. I did spend a little bit of time trying to figure out like how I wanted to use my colors. I will insert a picture if I do end up deciding. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go with the flow. So let's just see how this turns out. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Let's roll the clips. So before I start, I actually did the quickest sketch ever, but honestly, I wasn't too sure how to use all the colors, so this is a very, very loose representation of how things will turn out. And onto the pattern for this, I actually modeled mine after Mira's sweater since hers turned out so well. But just for reference, for the back piece, I crocheted 14 loops across and 15 rows in length, so it's a little bit on the shorter end. But if you do this and you do want a longer sweater, definitely just increase the number of rows that you use. And for the front piece, I did 2 sets of 7 loops by 15 rows, and for the arms I just used 15 loops at the widest circumference and 6 loops at the smallest circumference. Onto the knitting, I actually have never hand crocheted anything in my life, but it actually seems pretty simple to get the hang of. Basically, to start off, I just created a little loop and pulled it through so that I had a knot. Also, my camera sucks at autofocusing, so if it goes out again in this video, I sincerely apologize. But yeah, I just kept pulling knots through each loop until I had the right length. In this case, since I was working on the front panel, I only needed 7 loops, but for the back panel, I would have done 14 loops. And once I got to the end of that row, I just brought that yarn around and pulled through to the last loop that I made. The basic motion of this is just pulling yarn through each loop, and I just kept going until I was finished with that row. So you'll see it's pretty repetitive. You just keep pulling yarn through loops and you eventually end up with a rectangular piece. And then I got to a point where I wanted to change the color, so I just took the pink yarn and continued the same steps of stuffing it through the loops. I didn't show it here, but I ended up just tying a regular knot for the loose ends with the pink and the white yarn. And I kept going until I had the desired length. In this case, I did 15 rows. To seal off the top, I just took the last loop and the second to last loop on my finger, and then I pulled the loose yarn through these 2 loops and created a new loop. With this newly created loop, I took the next open loop in the chain and did the same motion and continued this until I reached the end of the chain. I repeated the same process for the other front piece and also the back piece. So here's some B-roll of me doing that. Also a great angle for my stomach rolls. And I did end up redoing a lot of my pieces since it was a little bit too loose the first time and then a little bit too tight the second time. But yeah, this would have been super quick if I were not just as much of a perfectionist as I am. Then the final thing I worked on was the sleeves, which wasn't too bad. Here is a crappy but quite functional diagram that I put together for the sleeve. Basically, I wanted the base of the sleeve to be cinched a bit before it poofs out, so I did 5 rows of 6 loops and then I started adding loops along the way as the sleeve fanned out. If that doesn't make sense, here is footage of me actually doing this, which might be a little bit more helpful. So first, I just start off the same way as I did with the flat pieces, so I created 6 loops with the method that I used earlier, and then I ended up with a braid. Once I had that, I just stuffed the tail end of the braid through the loop that I made and tried it on my wrist to make sure it fit. I did make sure that it was a little bit tight because once I started crocheting, I knew the sleeves would kind of develop elasticity because the pattern gives it a stretch. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Once I had that bracelet, I essentially just did the same motions I did with the flat piece, which is stuffing the yarn through the loops that I already made. It's actually easier on the sleeves since there's no back and forth thing that you have to do on a flat piece. So essentially you're just stuffing the loops in a circular pattern, and I did this 5 times. So I got 5 rows of this sleeve before I started expanding it. And for the expansion, adding loops was actually pretty easy. Honestly, I might have done this incorrectly, but it worked for me, so I'll just explain how I did it. Wherever I wanted to add a new loop, I would just go between 2 existing loops and stuff the yarn through the existing yarn, and then we had a new loop. I'm pretty sure I did this about 9 times. This isn't exact, but I added a new loop for about every half circle that I made, and once I got to 15 loops, I just stopped adding loops and just continued knitting the sleeve without adding any more loops. So at a certain point, I also decided to interject some color, and then at a later point, I ran out of yarn. And that is what brings us here. I started doing this last week, but I just never got around to finishing, so I put on the same outfit for consistency, but clearly you can tell it is a different day because my hair looks a little bit different. I have a new pimple forming, and my boobs are smaller because my period is over. But I did finish knitting all of this, and I'm a little bit disappointed in myself because I didn't have extra thread, but I will show you guys what I have so far. This is the back piece. I kind of wish I didn't do like 3 colors in a row because now looking at it, it kind of looks like those 3-layer cakes, and I can't unsee that. But that's the back piece. These are the side pieces, which they're very small, but that's like enough to cover up to my boobs. I have 2 sleeves. You can clearly see that they're extremely short. It's not looking good. And the sleeves seem a little bit tiny. Like that's like half of my arm. And again, I don't have extra yarn, which means I don't have extra yarn to connect everything with, and I don't know what to do. I asked my mom to bring some yarn that we have back at home, but it's like the thin kind of yarn, so I don't even know if that's gonna work. And so I went to Michael's again and just picked up 2 more balls of yarn. Actually, I think skein is the right term for this. I'm not gonna bore you with the additional hand crocheting that I did. And for the last part of everything, I basically just needed to attach all of the pieces that I had. For the back and the front piece, I just laid the back piece down so that the braided side was upward facing, and then took the front piece and laid that braided side downward facing so that they're touching. Then I grabbed the loop of the edge of the piece and matched them together. With the other piece of yarn, I just created a knot, pulled that tight, and then pulled it through the 2 loops on the pieces that I was attaching. And now holding on to that knot, I basically did the same thing with stuffing the yarn through the loops so that the yarn weaves through the 3 loops that I had, and just pulled that through, and that creates a new loop, which then you can use for the continuation of the sequence. And I just continued that all the way through for all of my pieces, and that is basically it. Hello. I don't know if you guys are ready for this, but this is what it looks like. It's so small. It is so much smaller than I thought it would be, but it's kind of cute. I do really like how the sleeves turned out. I was worried about that. I had to be honest with you, I did this like 10 times again. After my mom came, she was so disappointed in my craftsmanship, so I felt really embarrassed and I had to redo it. So this is what it looks like. It's actually surprisingly very uncomfortable, but it's cute, so that's all that matters. I think the reason why it's uncomfortable is because it's tight. Not really tight, but just it's bulky, so you can see like wherever I did the seams and I put my arm down, it feels like I have a textbook between my arms. The other thing is I did not attach this completely because I realized that, well, my mom realized and then she told me that if I sewed this completely across, let me just take this off. I realized if I knitted it completely across, I would not really have space for my neck, be like that much. So I kind of like left these 2 flaps to dangle. Anyways, that is basically the video for today. I'm so embarrassed by how long this took me to make. And I honestly am so impressed that Mira made this in 3 hours because this took me like 2 days because I had to like keep on like crocheting it. But yeah, Thank you for watching and coming along with me on this journey. As usual, if you like my face, please like and subscribe. If you don't like my face, please also like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time. Peace.